That's nice, very productive. And you just got off the phone with Japan. What were we talking to Japan about?
Always wine about what their intention is and how we want to work for new market, what's the trends before they take any decisions. So this end of the month is the moment where all decisions are taken for all the season in regards to wine.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Mhm.
So it's a pretty big couple events for the rest of the season then. Just like
Yes, there's many events during all the year. This is mainly the big last one, and it's in Italy. So for us, it's the biggest one because it's mainly Italian wines. Even though you have wines from all over the world, it's mainly focused on Italian wines. And since it's the biggest, it's where all the games played at this fair.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Um, well, Faye, let's go ahead and
Yeah,
I'm just gonna kind of have you introduce yourself, and we're gonna
sure.
kind of get into it. And everybody listening, it's a $100 million podcast. Thank you guys for coming on and listening. We're gonna listen to Faye. Faye, I'm gonna let you give yourself a little elevator pitch. Tell us who you are, why we should listen to you, a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Faye Lottero. I own and run a winery, a biodynamic organic winery on the hills of Tuscany. The idea here is to show you a bit what we can do and how diverse a winery can be, especially in Tuscany. Contrarily to many other areas, we produce wine, oil, and hospitality. So we focus our business on three, I would say, main tiers. So the idea is to introduce you to what we do, to my daily life, and to all the opportunities and everything that we offer at the winery.
I like it. I like it. Super exciting. So yeah, kind of three tiers. You got the wine, you got the olive oils, and you got the hospitality. I know you have like a bed and breakfast. You guys do some, truffle hunting and some different activities out at where you guys are at the farm. So yeah, tell me a little bit about the wines first. What kind of different wines do you guys produce?
Since we are in the Chianti Rufina wine area, because Chianti is divided into 8 sub areas, so there's not one Chianti, there's 8. The Rufina area, the one I am from, is the smallest of the 8. So it has a characteristic of being in the higher area of Chianti, northern part, fresher wines which are here to age, ageable wines, wines for a long time, good acidity, good freshness, so they can keep quite a long time. But I don't only make Chianti, I make other wines, always for the diversity I was telling you about. The biodiversity is the main principle of our estate because it is helpful for many things. If you only go for monoculture, you have much more disease problems, you have much more risks, entrepreneur risks, and you have much more commercial risks. So the idea of doing several wines and different wines with different blends is much better. We created 2 lines of wine. First of all, I need to tell you that all our wines are natural wines. What's natural wine? Natural wine means that it's a wine done with no intervention, no addition of yeast, no added yeast, no finning, no filtering. Only little sulfites are admitted, no intervention whatsoever. So it's a very, the natural wines are an expression of the territory, of the terroir, like you say, of the vintage, of the varietals, and that's what makes them interesting. So this being said, all our wines are natural, but we have 2 lines of wines. One that has no added sulfites at all. It's actually on the market in the US as a USDA organic Chianti. And the other has very little sulfites and it's only marked as natural wine. So we produce 13 different labels, which is quite a big number for the number of wines total. We produce around 80,000 bottles. We speak in bottles. In cases, it would be 25,000 cases, around 25,000 cases. And we produce 70% of red wine and 30% of white. The wines that we make without sulfites are a Chianti and 3 pet nats. What's a pet nat? Pet nat is a wine that ferments in the bottle and is a totally natural process. It ferments in the bottle, so it's a bubbly wine, fresh, fizzy, easy going for aperitif or for the summer or the hot summers. The other line is a much more structured line. It's a much more, I would say, conventional style, even though it's a natural wine. And they include a Chardonnay blend aged in oak, Chianti Rufina aged in concrete, a Chianti Rufina Reserve aged in wood, and another single vineyard aged in wood, always Chianti, and a Super Tuscan made from mainly Merlot and Shiraz grapes. So this is a bit to complete. And then we have 2 dessert wines, 2 sweet wines, and 2 grappas, 2 40-degree distilled grape berries. That's in the terms of wines.
Um, yeah, tell me about the dessert wines. I like Moscato.
Yes,
Big.
it's Vinsanto. Vinsanto means the holly wine. Vinsanto is a typical dessert wine from Tuscany. It's actually quite rare to find real Vinsantos on the market nowadays because it's a very expensive wine to make. It's produced with withered grapes of Trebbiano and Malvasia, which are 2 white berries. They're withered for 4 months and they're pressed, so you have very, very concentrated juice, super full of sugar. This juice is then fermented and put into small barrels under the roof, because in summertime it's hot, the wine ferments. In wintertime it's cold, the wine stops fermenting. Again the following year, and this happens for 10 years. So after 10 years of fermentation, stopping, fermentation, restopping, the wine is very complex, has a very good, I would say, acidity because of the stopping and going. Still a lot of sugar remaining that hasn't developed in alcohol, and around 16, 17 degrees of alcohol. It's a sweet wine that everybody normally knows with biscotti, with the cantucci. I normally like to pair it with dark chocolate because it's really, really great.
Wow, that's awesome. That sounds super good.
Mhm.
So from the wine stance, all these grapes do you guys grow on your farm?
Absolutely. This is the philosophy of our winery, is to produce exclusively from our own grown grapes. And I can tell you why. Because when you work in a natural way, natural farming is also important, but also because the way we want to make our wines, we know how we've been farming our grapes, and we have, I could say, to make it easy, like an immune system which is built through the plant to the grapes. Since you don't spray, the grapes are much more resistant, and that resistancy, that immune system is on the grapes, on the berry, which is much more rich in yeast, in tannins, in everything that you need to preserve the wine. And this is why we don't particularly need to add any preserves or anything else, since the berries are so resistant. So it all starts from the quality of the berries. If I had to buy some berries, I would know where they come from, or you may, but you don't know if the way they've been treated, and they may not have all that immune system I was telling you about that allows the wine to age without having to add anything. So this is why for us it's important. It's our rule. It's the way we work. We stick to it. It's difficult sometimes. You can't fight against nature. Sometimes nature doesn't give you the fruit you'd like. You have hail, and nowadays you know how nature is. It's very drastic. It's either super, super hot or super cold. It snows in May. The weather's crazy. But at the same time, we have noticed that if we don't intervene in the vineyards and let the vineyards and the vines produce the way they want to produce, then you get all that immune system even more, and you get a better result in terms of wine.
Mm. So you're saying you guys do a lot of pruning, you guys do a lot of different
Well,
strategies
the
and stuff like that.
pruning you have to do, but what we do mainly is the way, for example, we don't use any fertilizer. Because even if you use organic fertilizer, you are pushing the vine to produce more. What's a fertilization? Is to produce more. Well, on a short-term basis, it's good. You produce more, you have your fruit. On long term, that plant is not going to be resistant enough, and it's always going to be dependent on us. The plant would need us to feed it, to water it, to do all the things. If you let the plant grow at its own rhythm, it will produce what it can produce, but on a long-term basis, it's going to produce for a long time. And it's going to produce with this immune system. Other thing, for example, not only we don't give we don't feed the plants, we don't fertilize, we don't water either. We do dry farming. That way, the plant struggles. It's a bit like humans. If you struggle, you kind of build up your own strength, you know? So it's exactly the same idea. The plant struggles, produces a little less, but produces better. And we are aiming, and our idea is to work on quality and not quantity. And this is also why I told you initially that it was very important to have biodiversity, because the biodiversity in culture, so alternating vineyards, olive groves, truffle woods, wheat, we also have wheat, all these alternation of different cultures help all the system and the environment, because the vine suffers of specific diseases. The olives suffer of other specific diseases. So if you alternate the cultures, that helps retain or doesn't allow disease to spread, because one interrupts the other. So that's one of the main ways of growing sustainably and farming sustainably.
Yeah, and you're talking about like long term, and I know that before we move on to the kind of the other parts of your business, let's kind of stick to the wine section, and that wine is a very long term game, and that it takes many years for a wine and bottle to be ready. So how much, money do you put into inventory and production to actually have a bottle or have some barrels ready for however many years? And then how are you going to market yourself in the future to kind of, you know what the future is going to hold, make sure you're selling enough, you're going to all these events, making sure you have buyers. Tell me a little bit about that long-term strategy.
So for me, the long-term strategy, first of all, is not to follow a fashion. Wine cannot follow a fashion because it takes, as you were saying, so much time. When I plant a vineyard, it takes 4 years to produce the first berries. The first berries, though, are quite weak. To give you an idea, if I plant a vineyard of red berries, that after 4 years, I can produce some rosé, some very light, crisp red or rosé. And this for at least 10 years. So when I plant a vineyard, I have to think, okay, what type of wine am I going to make in 10 years' time? And then once you pick the berries and you need to ferment, the fermentation would last at least 3 to 4 weeks. And then you have the second fermentation, which is called malolactic fermentation, and that can last up to even 4 or 5 months. And then the aging process, which is at least 12 months, if not longer. So let's say roughly 2 years. So 12 years before. So you have to think of what type of wine. If I'm trying to anticipate a fashion, well, I'll always be out of fashion. If I stick to tradition and to what my territory has always been making, because here we make Chianti, not trying to do anything strange, but trying to do it in a modern way with technology that they didn't have in the past, to exalt the characteristic of the grapes, which is Sangiovese, to make it even better, because using, I would say, the knowledge of the ancestors with the traditions, but with the science of today, then I think it's not a question of being in fashion, because tradition is never out of fashion. It might be more or less appreciated in certain times. We diversify the markets where we work. So it's always ups and downs, you know. There was the moment where everybody wanted Chianti in the US, and now they're looking for other type of of wines, well, then you have Asian markets that may not be at the same rhythm. We work a lot with South America, Brazil, and Mexico. You could say that they're a little behind the US. So, what was the US 10 years ago is now South America, which is great. And then the US will come back probably in 10, 20 years. So, there's always ups and downs. But if at least you stick to a tradition, nobody can tell you that you're out of fashion or you're not up to date because it's the tradition. So that's the first thing when you were telling me, because you have to think as I think in the long term. Another type of work, which is not what we do, is if you are a wine bottler. A wine bottler doesn't particularly grow its own grapes. They may grow a little, they buy grapes, and they make wine to the style, to the taste, to the desire of the consumers. It's a totally different job of what we are doing.
Mm.
I'm not saying better or worse. Of
Yeah.
course, it's not my philosophy, uh, but
So
it's a
tell me,
totally different.
you guys don't bottle your own wine
We
yourselves?
do, we do,
Okay.
sure, we do, we
Okay.
do, we do. We bottle our own wine from our own grapes. What we don't do is we don't buy grapes to make and we don't make the wines to the taste of the consumer, to the desire of the consumer. We make the wines to express the tradition and the characteristic of our grape varietals, of our vineyard, of our territory, of our environment, and of the vintage. And that's why also the hospitality section, the wine tourism is useful, because the wine tourism is useful so that we get the final consumers. We work, I would say, on two levels. On one hand, I go to wine fairs to promote the wines to distributors, to importers, to taste the wines with them and try to find their a commercial, I would say, um, relationship, and to start a new relationship with a new country or whatever. On the other hand, we work directly with the consumer, because the consumer from all over the world, we do work from all over the world, comes to our state, and they come for an experience. They come to learn more about the wine. They come to taste the wine. They come to, and we give them that education. We give them that education because we believe that a consumer can decide, and of course decides, what he prefers, what he likes, what's his taste, but needs to have the knowledge of what he's drinking. Because sometimes they don't know. They don't know how wine is made. They don't know how wine can be made. Wine could literally be made without grapes. And I'm not exaggerating. Nowadays, you can buy tannins, colors, yeast, everything, and make your own wine without even a grape. So that's what we want to show the consumers, and that's why they come on the winery to visit the cellars, see how we work, learn how wine is actually made and how it can be made, so that they have the consciousness of that, they are educated about that, then they can decide what they want to drink, of course. But at least they know.
Yeah, I love that. To talk more about the wine, tell me about, because just for how long the process is, and I'm assuming it's just very expensive, and how much for you guys for the way that you guys do it, about how much per bottle is your cost over this, I don't know, 10, 12-year expansion that you're talking about, and how much are you selling each bottle for? Tell me about how that kind of like profit
Sure.
structure works.
Okay. The annual costs of a bottle of wine, from the berry, the juicing, the fermentation, I'm saying the annual work, would be around per bottle in between 4 to 6 euros, the cost. But then on top of this, you have to add the 10 years that you have needed to make that type of bottle of wine. The first years, you don't produce anything. After 4 years, five, you produce some rosés. So in our books, we actually divide the cost of the vineyard. So to plant a vineyard, you need to first work the soil, buy the plants, plant them, initially water them, grow them, put plots put stainless ropes to keep the vine together, tie them. So all that work, which from year 1 to 5 is the main work. And imagine from year 1 to 5, you have most of the costs, not the productive cost, but most of the costs to build up, like if you're building up a building,
Yeah.
and you have zero production. Well, I can't say that year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is that cost zero production. I divide that cost onto 35, 40 years because the average life of my vineyards is 40 years. Average because most of them are even more. And that's the sustainability and the long term I was telling you about. There are two ways of growing vineyards. The more industrial way, where you plant, you push, fertilize. When you plant a vineyard, you can also decide to plant it on a stock, which is a productive stock. We do it more on a gentle way, so it doesn't produce a lot immediately, but it produces slowly, more and more. It's like if you want your kid to grow up all of a sudden and then he's going to have back problems, or to grow slowly. That's a bit the same idea. So you can work that way, overproduce for 15, 20 years, push it with fertilization, water. And then after 20 years, that vineyard has done. It's given everything that it could give. It can't release and give anything else. So it's not our way of working. I'm repeating this. I'm not saying it's for me. It's wrong, of course, but everybody can decide how they want to run their own business, of course. But if you think about it, it doesn't work because it's always like, and then what happens when, and these are the ones that are making the cheap wines. But then what happens when it goes in crisis? I mean, it all goes down. If you have a real philosophy, when people come here and I tell them all this and they see it, actually, it's not just telling, they see the vineyards, they understand and they do appreciate that type of work. And I'm sure, I hope, when they go back into their own country, that's what they're looking for, even from other wineries. Because it's a sustainability I was telling you. Imagine, every 20 years you take out a vineyard, so you've wasted a lot of water, a lot of money, and you take out the vineyards, you rip them out. Most of them would just burn them, create CO2. So it's the unsustainability of all of this. So in terms of long term, but because we divided into 40 years, of course, that cost of production of plantation and of the vineyard is quite low if you spread it in 40 years. Even though once you've done that, every 5-6 years you have to repull the wires. You have to make sure. Sometimes the plants can die. We have wild boar and wild animals here. We have a lot of deer that like to eat the plants, so sometimes we have to replace the plants. So you have to maintain, but you do the minimum for it. And then until a vineyard produces a good amount, our oldest vineyard was planted in 1963. So it's now 63 years old. And it's producing little, but a great wine. It's actually producing one of our top wines. It's a single vineyard called Vigna Casanova, because Casanova is the name of that vineyard, just because it's close to a house called Casanova. So nothing to do with the person Casanova. But anyway, Casanova in Italian means the new house. It's close to this new house, which was built in 1884, just to show you how old the vineyard is and the winery is. And it produces such an extreme wine. Each vintage gives you something different, and that vineyard is so full of history. Imagine, in 63 years, that vineyard has seen so many things, so many climates. So it really is the expression. And that's what in my opinion, you would be looking when you drink a bottle of wine. A wine is not just a beverage. It's a socialized beverage that socializes, makes you socialize. Yes. There's alcohol. Yes. But there's so much more. The wine cannot and should not be the same every year. It has to really express all the work, the struggles, the good times, the bad times you've had in a year.
Hmm. And I mean, obviously, like for all the work and for all the time it takes, and talking about like a return on your investment years down the road, and God forbid, you know, some weather kills it, some animals come and kill it, before the time is up. It obviously has to be worth it in some way. The profit has to make sense. So it costs you about, I know you got to amortize all that time, but about how much does your really, nice wines cost per bottle, and how
Yeah,
do you
and
come up with
then
that price?
I gave you an average price, a good wine, and then the bottle is more expensive, the label is more expensive. We use wax rather than just a top, so all that the cost is probably around 12 to 14 euros. The cost,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the cost of the bottle. I haven't added up the costs of commercializing. I have to travel. I have to go to wine fairs. Otherwise, people don't know you. You have to do marketing. We have the social media marketing guy. You have to do a website. All that is, I would say, is not a direct cost of the production. It's an indirect cost, but it's still cost.
Yeah. And how much are the bottles when you actually sell them? Like these really nice wine bottles, and what's your kind of
Yeah,
range?
the wine bottle that I just told you costs around 14 euros. We sell it. So there's three levels of prices: export, restaurants, and final consumer. Of course, in the States, but not even an American wine producer can sell directly to a restaurant, because in the States, you have the three tiers. I have to sell to an importer who sells to a distributor. Sometimes the importer and the distributor can be the same person in the same state, and the distributor needs to sell to a shop or a restaurant. The shop can then sell to final consumers, takeaway, it's retail. The restaurant, it's on the premises, on-premise sale. So to give an idea, to export that bottle of wine would be around, I would say, on the price list is 22 euros, and it can have like a 10% discount. You always have to have a little margin discount, so 20 euros. And the final consumer is around 50. So you have to add 30% and 30% to give an idea.
That's
So
awesome.
of course, the hospitality section, when we get to sell directly to the final consumer, we get more margin. It's much more work because we sell a full pallet of 600 bottles at least to an importer, because that's the minimum. And we sell a one bottle minimum to a consumer. So that is the main difference.
Yeah, volume. Tell me a little bit about the marketing strategy, because are you guys capped every year by how many bottles you actually have inventory? And then it's like, well, I planned for this year 10 years ago, so I only made so many bottles, so I can only sell so many this year. Do you guys kind of run into that issue?
Sure. Well, there's ups and downs also in the wine market. So, of course, this happens. Some wines, and that's the good thing, all the wines that are the wines without added sulfites, they are also the fresh line, which we release a year after to 2 years after the production. Whereas the important wines, the reserves, we release after at least 4 years. I'm not selling when you plant the vineyard. You plant the vineyard, and the first 4 years it doesn't produce, blah blah blah, etc. I'm saying from the moment of harvesting, so the real production, from the moment of harvesting till the moment you sell it on a shelf. The basic ones would be 1.5 to 2 years, and the reserves 4 to 5 years. Therefore, my production of 2025, I produced, as I said, around 80,000 bottles. Half of it is due to be sold in actually the pet nuts in 2026. They're going to be released in June, produced in September and released, well, harvested in September and released in June 26. The Casanova, which we have harvested in September, will be released in June 2030.
Mm, 2030.
Okay?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at the moment in June 26, I'm releasing vintage 2020.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, so you have to think in that. The inventory depend really on what the market requires. Lately, the market requires more and more easy wines, the main market. That's why we've shifted to produce even mostly 60% of the wines which are sold within 1.5 to 2 years. Because nowadays an important wine not only has a cost, but you also have to have the right, if you buy a really good bottle of wine, you're not gonna waste it for an everyday dinner. You're gonna say, okay, I have to wait for the occasion, the right dinner, the right moment. So of course, 10, even 20 bottles of the regular wines, then you sell 20 bottles of those, one bottle of the top wines, to give you an idea.
Oh,
So
wow. Yeah.
sometimes we have some leftovers of the bigger ones and of the most important wines, and it's not a problem because those wines age a long, long time. It's just a question that it's in the inventory. You need to keep them in a cool environment, so you have air conditioning, warehousing, etc., etc.
Yeah.
One thing I'm trying to copy, if I can say, I'm working on it. It's the American model of wine clubs. It's a model that works very well. I've spoken lately with some colleagues of the Livermore wine area in California. And not only the wine clubs, really, I would say, get the consumers and the producer together, and there's a specific relationship. People then become, it's a bit like if it was part of their winery, and they make them also come over to assist the harvest. We have a bit of problems with that in Italy because we can't have consumers to do the harvest unless we are always with them one specific day. It's quite complicated because of the work regulations. They don't really allow it. In the US, it looks a bit more easy. But anyway, they get people to really get part of it. So people that are members of the wine club are part of the winery. So it's like you have your own gym club and you're always going to go to the same gym club because you have your friends, you have your habits, you have your things. And it's not very, very popular here in Italy at the moment. And I'm trying to kind of copy paste the American model, and we'll see how it works here.
Tell me a little bit more about the marketing platform. So you have the clubs. For the direct to consumer side, you have social media marketing, and you do
Yes.
that like organically, so people know more about you and the culture and heritage. Do you guys also?
We have a website, like an e-commerce website where people can buy online. People that have been to our winery as a host, as a guest, and have stayed at the winery have a special discount. So it's a bit like a club in the sense that they get a special discount for all their lives. And they, of course, we write to them when we have a new release, when we have a new bottle coming out, or when there's just a few bottles left of an old release. Sometimes people, like a specific vintage, or on that vintage there was a specific moment. So birth dates, marriage dates, important moments. And
Yeah,
since at the hospitality section at the restaurant and here we organize quite a lot of weddings, we have a lot of wedding dates, of course. And therefore, every year after the wedding, at the wedding anniversaries, we write to them and say, oh, we still have some of that vintage, which was produced on the year you got married, and since you got married on the winery, and that works really, really well.
I'm sure it
Uh,
does. Yeah.
Well, because it's people that get married here stay normally at least 3 days, but usually around 5. And even if they come and marry outside of the harvest season, they've participated in a certain way to the season. Like, let's say it's June, it's very hot, so they see me, I go and say I'm kind of worried because it's very hot. So they will want to know, oh, what's happening? How are the grapes doing? And then all of a sudden we're harvesting, we write to them, we've harvested, this is what we've done, and then the wine is ready, you can come and taste it, and then the wine is aged, you can buy it, and then there's some of this wine 10 years later, which was when 10 years ago you were at the winery. That really works well. Like everything, I think, that emotional part. Um, it's yeah. And it's not just a business model. It's really emotional because that's what we feel and what we are. That's what the wine can tell you more than I think any other type of industry. The wine is something that comes from the ground. It comes from 1 year of work, and every year of work for us, every vintage produced is a page of our story. In that vintage, we've had good moments, bad moments, because in a year, so many things happen to everybody, to every family, except that we translate it into a bottle of wine and into a vintage. But
Yeah.
it's exactly that.
I love that. I love that. In the wine business, what is the thing that actually makes the most amount of profit? And then maybe what is something that people think actually makes the most amount of profit but doesn't?
Oh, very interesting question. So if we put the hospitality part in the wine industry, like the wine hospitality, that's what makes the most,
Mm, yeah.
because it's immediate. And on one hand, it makes the most profit because it's immediate. On the other hand, it's immediate, so it comes and goes. It's by season. But what makes the most profit? Um, Definitely the young and the basic wines, because you would think, oh, okay, they're cheaper, they don't make profit, but actually you sell them within 1 year, 1.5 year, so you don't have all those costs of keeping it, etc., etc. The bigger wines, which are more expensive, at the end you make profit, of course, because it's all, I would say, it's a percentage, it's in parallel. But if you count all the years and the cost that you've had to keep them, the warehousing, etc., then at the end you have much less profit.
Interesting. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, what I want to talk next, maybe we'll talk a little bit about hospitality or the oils. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about the oils because I think that will kind of build into the hospitality. So tell me about that.
Yes. So oil is very interesting, and it comes just after the grape harvest. So we harvest the berries for the wine in September, October, and just after that, mid-October, end of October, we start harvesting the olives. Um, Olive oil is very expensive to make, the way we make it in Tuscany, not just us, but you sell it that same year. So we produce it in October, November, and it's sold by April. We have already sold all our olive oil. There's just a little bit on our e-commerce website on the platform, but everything is already sold. So that's super direct, super immediate. And it's also interesting because when people come over to stay on a winery, the idea is, oh, we're staying on a winery. And then when they discover that we're making our own oil, they're very curious about it, because that's when you realize that people know much, or quite a lot, I would say, about wine, but they know nothing about oil. What we started to do is what we call oil tourism. And there's a big movement of oil tourism in Italy, especially in Tuscany at the moment. So people come, and it's really great because people come on holiday in a lower season, in November. November is the fall, which is beautiful colors, but normally it's not the best, or not the season where people come into Tuscany. They come in spring, they come in summer, They come in the fall, September, October. They may come for the Christmas holidays. November is a little normally slow season, and it's actually working quite well. It works well also because it's actually a good moment to visit Florence and the artistic places, because if you come in the summertime, it's hectic and far too hot, so it's not good. But anyway, people started to embrace that. People realized that olive oil is part of our Mediterranean diet, which is also very important, where there can be a bit of crisis about wine, in terms of wine being alcohol for some people not healthy, which is not true. As long as you drink in moderation, everything, as long as you do everything in moderation, it doesn't harm. Actually, a glass of wine per meal is good for you because of the antioxidants and everything else. But in terms of oil, oil is really related to health. Oil, extra virgin olive oil is related to health. First, because it's produced directly from olives, obtained mechanically, which means olives which are crushed and pressed. So there's no addition of anything else, no extractors, no solvents or anything else. So it's vegetable fat obtained mechanically. So it's the best of the best you can have. Versus, animal fat, it's still animal fat, or vegetable fat like sunflower oil, which to extract you need to use solvents, which at that point doesn't make it so healthy. Olive oil is very rich in vitamin E. There's no other natural food that is so rich in vitamin E. It's rich in oleocantale. Oleocantale is what gives to the oil that spicy, that makes you kind of pricky here. It's actually a very, very strong anti-inflammatory. So it's like if you have a little dose, it's a bit what they call the Tuscan paradox. The Tuscan paradox is because here in Tuscany, we used to have a spoonful of olive oil every morning. All the elder people do that, and they're healthy, because it's like if they have injected in their own a little dose of anti-inflammatory, so they have much less heart disease, and it's scientifically proved. So olive oil is really related to health.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's why we are now investing a bit more into the olive trees. Planting an olive tree is even worse than vines. It produces after 15 years. But yeah, we are more working, so we are now, but it's even in a more long term. We are pruning them in a way so that we try and produce a little bit more. And we are working with natural compost in the fields, and we are using the animals in the fields so that they keep it clean. They eat the grass, but they do their little business and they create natural compost. That way, we're going to try and produce a little bit more. We will never be able to produce as much as they do in south of Italy because our olive trees are kept quite low. The reason for it is that we pick the olives by hand. So we can't do huge, big plants, because then it would be impossible or dangerous to climb over them. So we have to keep them quite short, but at the same time, we're trying to keep them a bit bigger so that we have more production.
Very interesting. What makes is olives kind of like wine where it depends on altitude, kind of olive, um, different stuff
Kind
like
of,
that?
yes. Olive trees are Mediterranean trees, so the limit is around 600 meters above the sea level. Over, it's difficult. Now with climate change, it can be a little bit more, but you've never seen olive trees in Northern Europe, you know. You don't see them in Denmark. You don't see them whereas now in Belgium and Denmark, they planted vineyards. So that is the limit. So yes, they like freshness and ventilation, especially for disease. There's a few diseases, of which one is called the fly. The fly actually does eggs in the olive and generates like a quick ripeness of the olive, and the oil becomes aged or rancid very quickly. Therefore, good ventilation and fresh air is good because the flies don't like that environment. So we have less of that disease problem because we are 500 meters above the sea level and in a totally windy environment. We have a windmill on the property, so you understand why we have windmills. So that protects, and we don't have that type of disease. It's a bit like for the olive tree, I would say, rather than the climate, which in certain limits you can't do because they just don't grow and they freeze, it's more a question of varietal. Each varietal has a different characteristic, and the way you pick them and so harvest them and crush them makes a different way. For example, in Tuscany, the culture, the tradition is to pick them by hand before they fall from the tree. And why that? Because in Tuscany, in November, December, well, December mainly, it used to snow. And they couldn't afford having the olives fall down on the snow and get ruined, because if the olives fall down on the snow, the oil would be rancid. So they didn't put nets on the floor letting the olives fall down. They actually were climbing on the trees and combing these trees to rip the olive from the tree. This is how traditionally it was made in Tuscany, and this is why the olive trees were always kept shorter. Down in south of Italy, for example, because they didn't have this climate problem and they didn't have the snow in December, they used to put nets on the floor and let the olive fall. So in January, by the time everything was fallen down, they were going to the mill. But imagine those olives have been standing, some have been standing on the floor for a month because they were waiting for everything to fall down. Of course, it's much cheaper production because you don't have the cost of picking, and because they were letting them fall down, the olive trees were, the millenary olive trees you have in Puglia, for example, are 10 times bigger than ours. So it's beautiful, but 10 times bigger than ours. So they produce even more than 10 times more because they were much taller. But those trees nowadays, they cannot pick by hand because they're too tall. So they have to wait for the olives to fall on the floor or shake them, but then you have to kind of hammer them and you bruise the olives. So if you bruise the olive, it's going to start fermenting. By the time you go to the mill, even if you rush to the mill, they've started fermenting. So you don't get the high quality we do get. It's just a question of tradition again and taste. So our oil is much more artichoke, fresh grass, tomato stem, tomato leaves. That's what we have in the mouth. Slightly bitter. Their oil is much more, I would say, nutty, a bit hay, like hay. It combines better, of course, fish because it's not as strong. For us, it's not strong enough. Their oil is a bit too sweet. So it's a question of taste. And that's a question of taste. But in terms of analysis, when you analyze Tuscan oil versus the traditional Southern Italy oil, I'm saying traditional because now even in Puglia, they've realized that it's much better to do olives, pick them, go to the mill directly. All the new, I would say 50 years ago, new implantations are much smaller. They look much more like our olive groves. But if you analyze the ancient way they were doing it and ours, we have 10 times more vitamin E. They may have 10 times bigger olives. We have 10 times more vitamin E. So it's a totally different product. But again, that's what oil tourism and that's what the hospitality is for, to teach the people about it.
I love it. I love it. Tell me about the hospitality side. What is most profitable with the hospitality side? How does that run?
So the hospitality, we have rooms, apartments, and villas. So it's good because we diversify also the offer. So diversifying the offer, we are more diverse for different solutions of type of holiday, different budgets, of course. We have 2 restaurants and we propose activities. So all of these are very profitable. Everything is. And everything helps the other. I think that we are so, I'm not saying unique because there are quite a lot of agritourism here in Tuscany, but the unicity that we have is having all these offers. People can stay here 1 week, go to the restaurant, go and come and do activities, go horse riding, visit the wine cellars, do a wine tasting course, cooking class, truffle hunting. And if they want, they can go to Florence if they want. So that's what helps. But we always, because the point of the hospitality is also to sell our wine and oil. That's why we offer all these things. So in our restaurant, we use all our produce, but on the table, there's our extra virgin olive oil. So even if you don't do activities, you get to experience the winery and what we offer. On Wednesdays, we do jazz and wine tasting uh, uh, evenings with pizza. So again, people get to experience in a beautiful landscape overlooking the vineyards, a jazz concert with a wine tasting. And we have different producers coming, not just us. We don't want to always do a one-man show. It's interesting also to have colleague producers. We help each other a lot. In our little consortium, we are only 20 producers. We do help each other. So we do events like crossed events with our guests. On the 20 wineries, 4 of my, I would say, small wine area, 4 have agriturismo. So they have hospitality. And we do combined wine tours. We have one combined wine tour with 3 wineries at the same time. So we all give 3 different wines to taste. We call it 9 shades of Chianti. And we all, and you can do like a cross experience, I would say. I believe nowadays you have to work in cooperation rather than work one versus the other. And I'd rather expand our wine area rather than other wine areas. So I prefer to help my neighbor. So we work in this way.
That's really
Now,
cool. Yeah, so you guys kind of work together well, and I mean, as you said, nine shades, and so because ultimately it comes down to taste. You guys are all different, you and all the wineries around you, or would you guys say like all your wine tastes the same, or it's
no,
completely?
no, they are all different because we're all very personal in the way we work. They are all from the same territory, from the same terroir, so they all have this freshness I was telling you, which is characteristic of the Chianti Rufina, for sure. We have that same, I would say, because it's the same territory, but it's like a winemaker is a bit like a tailor. Everybody's got their own style. So it's interesting to go and visit a wine region. It's a bit like if you go to Napa. Napa is the same wine region. It has a characteristic. It has a certain soil. It has very, very many varieties. But let's say you want to do all the Pinots or the Cabernets from Napa. Each one is going to work in a different way, more or less maceration, more or less extraction, wood, no wood. So everybody has their own style. Now that's what makes it interesting. And we try and design tours in between us where we are not repetitive. So we kind of did the tour in between us so that when you come and do one of the tours where we are 3 wineries, you don't get all the introduction about our wine area every time you go and visit a winery, because otherwise you're going to lose half an hour with the same introduction. So we start the introduction at one winery and they do certain wines and certain food. Then they come to the second winery and they do another. Normally I'm the second winery most of the time, and I speak more about the agriculture and the field and how we grow our vineyards, and we do a lunch. And then you have the last winery where you speak more about the history and you do the cheese, which is to finish the lunch. So it's also a culinary, I would say, experience uh, with a trip with something going like this, and that works really very well. So what we're trying to do now, since our wine area is accessible by train, not to the wineries directly, okay? To the wineries, you would need 5 to 15 minutes drive. We are working together with a train system where people can stop at the first stop, and then there's 3, 4 wineries to visit, and then second stop 3, 4 wineries to visit with shuttles. So we can do also offer. We are working on it. We'll probably be ready by September. The idea is to offer sustainable traveling, sustainable I would say, way of visiting, and also avoiding drinking and driving, which is also, I would say, something important that we have to work on. We have to educate consumers, as I was telling you about wine, and also to drink consciously.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. This is all like really good stuff. I have a couple questions here. Maybe we'll do like a little shotgun round and you can kind of just
Yes.
describe some little things back and forth. So, being that you guys are all kind of working together and whatnot, and every wine is different and unique, who would you say your biggest competitor is, and why are you, how do you like go about being better than them or getting more sales than them?
Okay, competitor but good friends. So I couldn't say that they're competitors. They are competitors in the sense that I admire them and I'd like to be like them in a certain way, and they may say the same thing of me. They're called Castello del Trebbio. It's a castle. It's a beautiful venue. They produce organically like us. They have hospitality. They have a restaurant. They do a lot of weddings. So we are very, very similar in that way. Run by a woman like me. So very similar in that way too. Um, they're slightly bigger than us. So they are even more diverse. They are very successful, so they bought other wineries in other regions of Italy. Um, so I admire them because they do a great job. They do great wines. They work very well, and they're constant in their work. So yeah, they would
That's
be
awesome.
competitors in the sense that I'd like to be there. They do make more income, I believe. I don't know. I don't read their books, but from the outside, I think they do better than us. They're bigger than us.
Mm. Are you where you thought you would be today 2 years ago in the
Two
business?
years ago,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I would have wanted to be a little step further. So I'm not where I would like to be. If you tell me 20 years ago, I'm saying yes, I've done a great job because I was looking long term and I didn't understand that I could have developed so much and I've done so many things. Wines without sulfites, where I was pioneer, and everything that I have created. 2 years ago, I didn't really slow down because I'm always very, very active. It's just that sometimes things don't happen to work the way I dreamt of. But I'm gonna get there for sure. Don't worry. It just takes a little longer than what I wanted to.
Totally. And I know like you have some different levers like the hospitality, that's a lever you can pull to increase revenue. The olive oil, that's something that's a little more quicker, but I know like with wine it's a little more long term, but I guess for you I would say 2 years I would say is a short term, I guess, goal kind of thing. But where do you see yourself in 2 years? Where do you see this business?
Well, it's as you said, it's in the wine business that I have to really go up. Okay, in hospitality we are just renovating a new villa, so that's gonna be, but that's easy. You renovate, we're gonna rent it, and that's gonna be easy. Uh, it's exactly where I wanted to be now, which I'm not. So that's where I will be in 2 years' time. I would like to be recognized as not recognized for the work I'm doing. For the work I'm doing, so I'm trying to explain, I'm struggling to explain that I'm not doing conventional wines. I'm doing wines in a very natural way, with all the effort and with all the risks I'm taking, because natural wine is a risk even to age. And that's where I want to be. I want to be recognized by the wine guides. I'm fighting because people too much drink wines that have points on the guides, and that's the only thing that matters, which is not, in my opinion. I'm fighting to be recognized as not following a fashion, but following what nature gives me. So slowly, slowly, I'll get there, and I'll be recognized.